Hi everyone and welcome to the PE Classroom's GCSE PE walkthrough. Before I begin, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. My name is Emily and I'm one of the creators of a lot of the PE Classroom's resources that you might use within your lessons. Within this session, I will be giving an overview of your GCSE PE exams, as well as giving you a tutorial of how to recognise and answer different types of questions that will come up on your papers. We'll be going through different assessment objectives and looking at what they are, as well as some extended questions towards the end as well. Throughout this, you will be given the chance to complete some example questions, and your answers will be instantly marked by our AI and you'll receive feedback straight away. It might be an idea to have open the resources from the Revision Hub page that are under this video, as you will need them a little bit later on, and you'll have to pause the video and use the resources. So if you haven't got them open, just pause the video and open them up just so that you're all ready. Feel free throughout the video to pause it and have a go at some of the questions that I go through and I talk through as well, if you want some extra examples before I reveal the answers basically. Okay, so let's get started then. So your Edexcel GCSE PE paper. This is what it looks like as an overview. It has it's an hour and 30 minutes long, and it's out of 80 marks and a possible 36% of your GCSE. It is split into three sections. So section A is the anatomy and physiology and includes movement analysis. Section B will be all the topics surrounding physical training. Section C will be one extended answer on physical training, so it's only going to be on that topic. And then there will be use of data throughout the paper as well, so you'll get questions that vary on being able to use data. Your paper 2 is an hour and 15 minutes long. It's out of 60 marks and it's 24% of your GCSE, so not as much. Again, it's split into three sections. So section A is your health, fitness and wellbeing. Section B is your sports psychology and socio-cultural influences. And section C again is an extended answer. And then again, the use of data is embedded throughout. Okay, so that's just a really quick overview of your two papers. You should already be quite familiar with these all these topics. The next bit that I'm just going to introduce to you is about how you're going to be assessed throughout the papers. So assessment objectives are the skills and knowledge that you are tested on throughout the exam. So every question you answer is designed to assess one of these skills. So for example, AO1 questions demonstrate knowledge and understanding of the factors that underpin something. So of a certain topic you need to demonstrate knowledge and an understanding of it. AO2 questions are about applying your knowledge and understanding the topic. So you might have to apply your knowledge to a sporting example, for example. And then AO3 is about analysing and evaluating factors. So you may have to go into a little bit more detail and further analyse or evaluate a specific topic. So these are the three types of questions that we're going to be looking at in this session today. Okay, so before we go into each assessment objective, you need to be familiar with the different command words that can come up on your exam. These are essential as they are an indication of how to answer a question. Okay, so AO1 questions typically have that identify, state, give, define, describe, etc. As a command word, and just as some little stats for you, on average, your paper 1 on your paper 1 and on your paper 2, you'll have 33 marks available for AO1 on paper 1 and 25 marks on paper 2. AO2 questions typically are explain, analyse and discuss. And again, they are roughly worth 27 marks on paper 1 and 21 marks on paper 2. And then your AO3 questions tend to be analyse, discuss, justify or evaluate. So they are, again, like I said, harder questions, more in depth, and they require you to show more skills. And again, typically these are on paper 1 average of 20 marks, and on paper 2 14 marks. So just from this you can see that essentially if you have a base knowledge, so you are able to recall facts, state things, describe things, and you just have a range of knowledge throughout all of your topics, there are approximately 33 marks up for grabs. That's a third of your marks of the whole paper, just from really easy kind of recalling facts and knowledge. So if you have a really good broad range of different topics and you understand all of the topics on the exam, the chances are that you're going to score pretty well and get a decent amount of marks basically just from the AO1 questions. Have lots of sporting examples as well, and be familiar with lots of sporting examples, just because again that's how you gain your AO2 marks sometimes. So if you have knowledge of different sports and you can apply things to them sports, then you're likely to do well on them questions as well. Okay, so like I said, these AO1 questions, so we're going to look at what does it assess, what the question might look like, and how you go about answering it. Okay, so to hit those AO1 questions and get them marks, you need to be recalling facts, using terms, key definitions, thinking about key concepts, all of them kind of just base knowledge, being able to recall information that you've learned basically, and demonstrate that knowledge of that topic. The question can be in the form of multiple choice, it can be a 1-word question, it could be a short 1 marker, so you have to give like a phrase or a sentence, or it can actually be accompanied by an AO2 and AO3 assessment objectives as well, which tend to be worth a little bit more marks, and I'll go into more detail about that in a bit. How you answer it, again, like I said, depending on the question, it might just be an answer with 1 word, it might be tick which one out of a multiple choice question, might require a concise description or a definition. Okay, so we're just going to go through some examples then. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, there are different forms that AO1 questions can come in, but firstly we're just going to take a look at single AO1 marks. Okay, so here are some examples here. The first thing that you want to recognise from the question is then command words. So you've got both of them are state, so they use the command word of state, so it already gives you an indication that it's a pretty easy question, it's an AO1 type question. They also give away is it's 1 mark each, and also if you just read the question, it's really obvious that it just wants you to give a little bit of information, a fact, something about the topic. Okay, so here you've got then state, so keep it short and to the point basically, that's what state means. And it's asking you, reason why the skeletal muscles are classified as a voluntary muscle. Okay, oh, sorry, I keep flicking between. So what you need to do is demonstrate the knowledge of the voluntary muscles. Okay, so again, really basic information. So an answer that you could use is just it's conscious control. It's something that that you have control over, whether you move it or not. That's what a voluntary muscle is, because if I wanted to move my arm, I choose to, that's what I'm telling my brain to move it. So you're stating the fact. And similarly to this, state the name of the fitness that measures that how quickly you can change direction. Again, you are just stating, you're demonstrating that knowledge of the component of fitness that's being described in that statement. So you'd have to identify what component of fitness it is and then name the test for it. And again, the answer, nice and simple, Illinois agility test. Okay, so yeah, nice and easy, and that's just worth 1 mark. Okay, this type of question is still AO1, but as you can see at the top here, it is multiple AO1 marks. So for example, I'm just going to highlight right before reading it, you've got 2 marks here, 2 marks here, and 2 marks down here. So already you kind of have to read the question, realise how many marks it's worth, so you know how many points you need to make. But again, that state command word comes up, and you've got the describe command word down here. So you just need to be able to recognise that that's quite basic level again. So you're already thinking an AO1 mark. Again, keeping it simple, recalling facts. So you've got here, state the name of the labelled muscles in this picture here, and state the function of the labelled muscles, and both are worth 2 marks. You'll be familiar with this as a table, I'm sure, if you've done lots of practice questions before. So you've just simply got to identify the muscles and demonstrate your knowledge of the functions, okay? And there are the answers there. Similarly to the hinge joint question, again, demonstrate that knowledge of the hinge joint, and that's just nice and easy. And then yeah, so you can say it allows flexion and extension, and the angle at the joint increases or decreases. So you're just showing some knowledge of what a range of movement a hinge joint has. Sorry. Okay. So that is multiple marks, but they're still AO1 questions. Okay. So it's not asking you for anything more. It's not asking you to explain or anything like that. Then you've got them AO1 marks that I talked about that might be integrated into questions that have an AO2 and an AO3 response. So this question here is asking you to explain. So already, if you know your command words, you know that explain means a little bit of something else. It means you've got to go into more depth, you've got to explain something, provide more detail. Okay, so here, explain using an example why involuntary muscles are important during sport and physical activity, and it's worth 3 marks. So already we know we're going to have to go into a little bit more detail, and so here's the kind of breakdown is what you're looking for. So you need to show that knowledge of involuntary muscles. So what is it, which we obviously discussed in a previous question, and it's, you know, you need to be able to recognise, to answer the rest of this question, you need to be able to recognise what involuntary muscles are. So being able to say what that is definitely the starting point. Then it says using an example, so you would have to give an example of an involuntary muscle, which is your AO2, which we'll go on to a little bit later, but AO2 is generally applying a sporting example. And then it's actually asking you to, because it's asking you to explain why they are important, you need to obviously then go into further detail and justify why this is important for that performer. So an answer might look a little bit like this. So involuntary muscles work automatically with specific instructions from the player. So obviously they're talking about a sporting example here, but they're specifically talking about what involuntary muscles are. That's their AO1 mark. E.g. the involuntary muscle in the respiratory system, so that breathing in and out. We do that as you know, every single day without even thinking about it and giving our brain that command. They've given the example. This allows increased airflow or flow of oxygen into the lungs. So they've gone into that a little bit more detail. So if you aren't too sure about the AO2, the AO3 types of questions, or that word explain confuses you, or you're not really sure how to answer it, if you could recognise that actually I might just have to give a little bit of knowledge of what involuntary muscles are, then do that and you've already gained 1 extra mark. Okay, rather than just going, oh, I don't know how to answer it. Don't let the explain and the word waffle confuse you, really, because yeah, you don't want that. Okay. So if you would just like to pause your video, if you have a go at the AO1 mark questions that are supplied for you on your Revision Hub homepage, so if you just go back to where you're looking at the video and just scroll down a little bit further, and you'll see some download buttons. You can have a go at them questions. They're all AO1. They're a mixture of single AO1 questions, multiple AO1 questions, so worth 2-3 marks, or they might be some questions that have got just them little extra AO2, AO3 points in, but still you might just be able to get them AO1 points. So if you just pause the video now, you can have a go at them. The AI will mark it for you, so you'll get instant feedback, and then when you're ready you can come back to this video. Okay, so at this point I'm assuming you are coming back to me after doing the AO1 questions. So now we are going to look at AO2 questions. So these are where we get a bit more specific. You have to apply your knowledge to sporting examples, or apply knowledge that you know of certain topics. So as it says there, you want to use relevant examples to show your understanding of how the concepts work. Similarly to AO1 questions, it might be multiple choice, it might be one word or short 1 mark answers, or again it might be a question that's alongside an AO1 or an AO3 point, that's meant to say 3 there, and it could be worth more than 2 or 3 marks. How you answer it, you want to consider the amount of points that you need to make. So is it just 1 mark, is it 2 or 3 marks? Does it ask you to specifically relate it to a sporting example? And you might need to consider whether you need to demonstrate some knowledge first. So going back to that, if it's alongside an AO1 mark, you might need to add a little bit more before you hit that AO2 assessment objective. So here are some examples then. So both of them, again, we're going to stick with, they're both 1 mark available, but they are AO2 type questions. So you can see here that the command words we've got is give, and this one doesn't quite have a command word. This is a multiple choice question, so generally they tend to say which one of the following or something along them lines. So they do use, especially this give, they do use similar command words to AO1 type questions. But the clue is it's saying give 1 example of a games player working. So it's asking for a sporting example. So straight away you should be able to recognise that's an AO2 mark that I should be getting basically. So it's suggesting that you need to apply your knowledge of a games player, and essentially you're applying the knowledge of anaerobic fitness. So what type of player, or sport player, athlete works anaerobically. Okay, so nice and simple. Apply your knowledge of anaerobic exercise to give an example. So sprinting for a loose ball, jumping to head a ball, serving in tennis, etc. You could say any of them really. This next question, it's very obviously similar to a multiple choice, but again at this point we're trying to distinguish what's the difference between an AO1 that looks like this as a multiple choice or an AO2 question. So what makes this an AO2 is it requires you to apply your knowledge of muscles contracting. So it says which one of the following muscles contracts to bring about extension at the hip. So you've got to use your knowledge of muscles, so you're not just identifying muscles, you're identifying the ones that allow extension at the hip. Okay, and so you've got your answer there. Okay, so AO2 questions but singular marks. Okay, the next one then is still AO2, but it is multiple AO2 marks. So I'm just going to point out here that they are both worth 2 marks. Okay, and I've just put in bold there the command words, so they're both explain. So these are requiring a bit more detail to this question. So straight away we can recognise that it's an AO2 question because it's asking you to explain. So both questions have given you a scenario. So for example, the first one, Chris has a resting heart rate of 50 beats per minute. Explain why Chris's heart rate is higher at the start of the race than is his resting heart rate. So it's asking you to apply your knowledge of heart rate and knowing how it responds during exercise, and answer the scenario basically. So your answer there, again, it's worth 2 marks. So you could say something like, he may have elevated his heart rate by warming up, because that is a possibility. Or you could say as well something to do with a hormone, adrenaline is released, that obviously raises your heart rate. So obviously you need to say 2 things, but they're 2 possible things that you could say. The second question, during a 100-metre race, an elite sprinter may only breathe twice. Explain why an elite 100-metre sprinter may only breathe twice during the race. So it's given you a sporting scenario here, and so you're going to have to apply your knowledge of respiration essentially to 100 metres. As a 100-metre sprint. So you could say the 100-metre sprint is an anaerobic event, as there is not enough time to produce energy aerobically. So you've already made 2 points. That is explaining and applying my knowledge to a 100-metre event about anaerobic respiration basically. Okay, on to AO2 questions, but again it's that slightly more complex, where we've got to try to recognise that there is an AO2 point in there somewhere, so we might have to apply our knowledge, but we may have to do something as well as that. So straight away we can see the command words are both explain, so we're thinking, okay, this is going to be at least an AO2 type question. But from both of them you can see that there is some kind of sporting context. So the first one says, which one of the training methods from continuous plyometric and weight training Remy should use the most to improve his performance in the 10,000 metre race, for example. The difference between these two questions to the ones previously is obviously it wants you, before you can make an assumption and say which one is most relevant, it's asking you to kind of show your knowledge of these methods of training. So that's how you're going to have to answer them first. Okay, so you need to be able to use that knowledge of, is the continuous training most relevant, is plyometric, is weight training, so what do they train first? So here's your answer: continuous training to improve his CV fitness. So we've already recognised out of the three that continuous training is the most relevant bit, and we've linked it to aerobic fitness for the 10,000 metre event. So that's me showing my knowledge and relating it to the sporting example. And then your other mark, so you can work aerobically for longer, or you could say something like has enough oxygen for energy to maintain a good pace over the 25 laps. Spelling mistake there, see if you spotted it. So already there you can see that they've gained the 2 marks, but they've had to demonstrate the knowledge of continuous training and linking it to that sporting example before they've then given the reason as to why it's the most relevant. So that last bit there is that AO3. So again, if you're not sure about how to answer it, just demonstrate that knowledge or relate it to the sporting example and you're bound to get a mark. This next one, explain one reason why a shot putter would use vertical jump test. So it's 2 marks. So for this question, before you give your reason why the shot putter would need to complete the vertical jump test, you need to be able to demonstrate your knowledge and recognise the vertical jump test for power. So that's your first point. So that would be an AO1 point. And then you would go into your explanation as to why the vertical jump test is therefore relevant. So your answer might be a test for power, which the shot putter needs to throw the shot a long way. Okay, so this one's obviously slightly different to this question. It's requiring an AO1 point before the AO2, you giving your reason. Okay, so if you would like to now pause your video and you can have a go at the AO2 mark questions that are supplied on the Revision Hub course page, just simply click the download button, have a go at it, AR1 mark it again, and then you can come back to me in just a second. Okay, welcome back then. So we're going to move on to our last type of AO question, and that is AO3 style questions. So these require you to break things down a bit further, weigh up the pros and cons, or you might have to compare something. Sometimes these questions you need to analyse a situation before you kind of break it down. You might have to justify your reasoning of something based on some evidence that you've given or that you know of. The question might again look like, in terms of, you might have to analyse something, so analyse an action, analyse a movement, analyse some data. That's generally how AO3 questions look as a 1 marker. You might have to give your opinion and back it up with some evidence, so a slightly longer style answer, and again it could be part of the question that's alongside the AO1 or an AO2 point, so it might be like a 3 mark question and you might need to hit each point as well. How you answer it, consider the amount of marks, so how many points you might need to make. Do you need to relate it to a sporting example as you're analysing something or explaining something? Using linking phrases, so this means that, as a result of this, this leads to, this is because. That's how you really hit them deeper level answers, by expanding your answer really. Okay, so we're going to, a little tip there, always back up your points and remember to answer the question. So definitely always make sure you've answered the question for AO3 questions. Okay, so here are some singular AO3 examples. So this one here doesn't have necessarily a command word, but it's asking which one of the following is the correct rating for a female who scored 32 in the grip dynamometer test, and it's only 1 mark, so you're gonna have to make 1 point somewhere. This is obviously wanting you to analyse the data. Okay, so for this question you need to obviously look at the data carefully. It's obviously asking about a female, so the first thing, don't make this mistake. A lot of people just jump to conclusions and just follow, you know, the first line. You need to look for the female row first, and then you need to look for 32 in it. Okay, so obviously 32 is in between 31 and 36, so therefore the answer is B, and it's good. Okay. You need to make sure that, yeah, you're reading the question carefully for this one, and don't get your figures mixed up, so just double check. This question over here, it says state, so we recognise state as a command word as like a lower level, but because this is linked to analysing something, so the question says state the lever system used in the sporting action below. So you've got to essentially analyze the action that is happening in front of you, and link it to a lever system. So it's asking quite a bit more rather than just stating something. So it requires your knowledge of lever systems and to be able to apply that to sporting examples. So for this question it would be a third class lever. Okay. So like I said, singular AO3 marks tend to be some kind of analyse an action, analyse some data. Okay, so maybe, you know, try to be able to recognise that when you're going through the paper. Okay, so moving on to multiple AO3 type questions. So already you can see that these questions are worth 2 marks and question 2 is worth 3 marks. The command words that we're recognising straight away is an AO3 type of command word, so analyse. So we already know that we've got to really look into that, you know, and apply that more in-depth knowledge that we have to a sporting example. So analyse the plane and axis used to perform this movement. So we recognise that this is a cartwheel. And we need to obviously identify the action within the image before we then apply our knowledge of planes and axes. So essentially, as the athlete is doing a cartwheel, they are going around the frontal plane and the sagittal axis. So they are the 2 answers for the 2 marks that you need. So it's analysing as they're doing the cartwheel what plane and axis they are going round. And it's very similar to an AO1, a singular AO3 type mark, but it's just asking 2 things from you in 1 question, so that's why it's a multiple AO3 question. And same for analyse a lever system used in the sporting examples or sporting actions below. So you've got swinging the lower leg for a forward kick in rugby, heading a football, and going up on your toes as you serve the ball. Now you might think these are very specific actions, but obviously because you need to apply them to lever systems, you have to you know, have really specific examples for that. So again, for this question, you're analysing the sporting actions that are taking place, and you're having to link them to the different lever systems. It doesn't require any connection between the answers. You know, just because it's 3 marks, they are purely singular marks, but just again within 1 question, which is why there's multiple AO3 marks available here. And because it asks you to analyse each individual one, you know that each individual one is worth 1 mark. Okay, so again, if you're having a little go at this before I reveal the answers, there's your answers there. So they are the multiple AO3 questions that tend to come up. Generally, it's some kind of analysis question. Okay, on to the slightly more difficult AO3 types of questions, and so this is where you might get AO3 AO3 marks within multiple assessment objectives. So it might be linked with AO1, it might be linked with AO2, but so you've obviously got to do a little bit more to get the marks on this question. So these are obviously the harder questions because you have to demonstrate multiple skills. The command words within these questions suggest that they require you to do more than just demonstrate your knowledge of something. So this first question here says, justify using the ratings in the table which athlete would most likely be chosen to run the 3,000 metre race. So firstly, it requires you to analyse the data in the table to suggest one of the athletes, so the athlete 1, 2 or 3, that would be most suitable to run a 3,000 metre race. So because you're analysing some data, that is your AO3 mark. It is then asking you to justify why you think this. So essentially you're being asked to link the 12-minute Cooper test result to what a 3,000 metre runner would need, and that is obviously aerobic endurance. So essentially linking the Cooper test for aerobic endurance and knowing that aerobic endurance you need for a 3,000 metre race. So applying that knowledge basically. For the last mark, you would need to further justify the need for aerobic endurance for this athlete. So essentially why does a 3,000 metre athlete need to have a good Cooper run test results. So your answer would be athlete 2. So if you look at the data, you're looking down here, which athlete would be obviously the best person. Because we know that we're looking for aerobic endurance, we would see that excellent is the top rating basically. So athlete 2, as they have the highest excellent rating for aerobic endurance, so we're justifying why we think this. And then which they would need to delay fatigue or work aerobically, obviously linking that to the 3,000 metre race. So that would be really linking it to a sporting example, which would be our AO2 question. Next question then, explain one benefit, a long-term training effect on the cardiovascular system for a long distance runner. So this is worth 3 marks. So slightly different in terms of how you answer the question. So it's worth 3 marks, so you know you need to roughly make 3 points. So firstly, you would need to demonstrate your knowledge of a long-term effect on the cardiovascular system. I keep doing that. Then you would need to explain the effect and how this benefits the long distance runner, and then you would need to give an explanation of how this then benefits the runner during a race. Okay, so they are your 3 marks. So this one's quite a nice question because it's got an AO1 point, an AO2 point and an AO3 point. Okay, so you could say something like an increased resting stroke volume, so that's you demonstrating your knowledge of a long-term effect of the cardiovascular system. Remember, you wouldn't get a mark if you relate it to the respiratory system or the skeletal, you just wouldn't get a mark. Second mark, so more blood leaves the heart or it increases the oxygen delivery. And then your AO3 points, so they can work aerobically for longer or it delays fatigue. So yeah, a lot more to that answer. Like I said before, if you struggle with higher mark answers or you're unsure of how to answer a particular question on this type of question, you might just pick up 1 or 2 marks just by demonstrating your knowledge of the long-term effect on the cardiovascular system, or just being able to explain and link it to that sporting performer. Okay, so again, it's now your time to have a go at the AO3 questions just below the video. If you click download, you'll be able to answer the AO3 questions. Again, they are a mixture of singular AO3 questions, multiple AO3 questions, or AO3 questions linked within AO1 and AO2. Okay, so if you pause this video now and then you can come back to it. Okay, welcome back. I hope you did okay on the other questions that you've just had a go at. So now we're going to look at the extended answer questions. So these type of questions, they assess your ability to answer all of the assessment objectives that we've just looked at in this session. So your ability to demonstrate your knowledge, apply it to sporting examples, and then obviously answer the question and give a conclusion based on the evidence that you've given. This question is obviously only a 9 marker, and it is generally the evaluate command word that they use. So if you know how to evaluate, that's how you would hit the points in this question. some little tips on how you answer it, underline key information, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Give that brief introduction, give a conclusion, so generally that's what they want to see. Also maybe splitting your answer in 3 paragraphs, just so it's really clear points, and you know, you've ticked off all them different assessment objectives, and yeah, try to make a point about each assessment objective as well. I put a little, you know, don't be scared of these questions. Just because you see it's 9 marks, just because you know, oh, that means I've got to answer lots and put lots of information in, doesn't mean to say that you're not going to be able to get any marks from this. As a minimum, you might be able to get the 3 marks that are worth AO1, that reach that AO1 objective. So this is a little kind of hints and tips of what type of language that you can use when you're answering your you know, the question. So you might want to use this in a minute when you have a go at your extended question in a second. So you can use any of these bits of language. Evaluate, it basically means considering both sides, so looking at strengths and weaknesses, advantages, disadvantages. On one hand it's this, on the other hand it's that, and so on. Okay, so example question that we've got here then is: Mason is a sprinter. The image shows him waiting to start a race. Sprinters require high levels of power, speed and reaction time to perform well. Mason trains regularly using interval, plyometric and continuous training. Evaluate the importance of these 3 methods of training in improving Mason's performance in sprinting. So firstly, all 9 markers, this is the breakdown of the assessment objectives. So for each 9 marker there are 3 AO1 marks up for grabs, 3 AO2 and 3 AO3. So like I was just saying, if these type of questions scare you, you can try and just get them 3 marks for AO1, which is just simply giving some knowledge or recalling some facts in some way. So that's how you get some marks. The first thing that I would be doing with this type of question is I would be highlighting some key bits of the information. So I'm just going to get up my highlighter pen there. So I would be highlighting firstly the command word, so I recognise obviously that it's an evaluate. It does ask me for 3 methods of training. It is obviously worth 9 marks, so you know it's a big one. And it's asking about the importance of these 3 methods of training, so you know that you've got to, in your evaluation, essentially say which ones you think are most important. It actually gives you what it wants you to talk about, so interval, plyometric and continuous training. So you already kind of know that they are your 3 topics or 3 bits of information that you are talking about. It also gives you the information of you need high levels of power, speed and reaction time, so you know to kind of incorporate them into your answer somewhere. So once you've done that, to ensure that you're meeting each AO, I would be doing a brief plan, just so that I know to keep my answer concise and make sure I'm hitting each point. Okay, so at this point you kind of have 2 options of how you could choose to go about writing your answer. So option 1 is you cover all of your AO1 points first, so 3 AO1 points. Then you could cover 3 AO2 points and then 3 AO3 points, and then write your conclusion at the end. That's one option, which is essentially what I'm going to show you in a minute. The other option is to kind of put 1 AO1 point followed by an AO2 point followed by the AO3 point, and that is 1 paragraph, and then you repeat the process for the other 2 paragraphs. So going by the question, done that again. Going by the question, the AO1 point is you need to apply your knowledge, so state some facts. And because in this question we already highlighted what we need to talk about, you know that your 3 AO1 points, so your 3 facts, are about interval training, plyometric training and continuous training. So straight away you know that that's what you need to write about. So I'd be given a definition of it, stating what it is basically. My AO2 points will be applying it to sprinting, okay, because we're talking about our sprinter here, and this is where I suppose we can relate it to the need for power, speed and reaction time, which we obviously know is not very which is very relevant. So you could be saying things like interval training will improve his speed, so linking all of a sudden it's demonstrating you've got the knowledge of the component fitness of speed. You can train using interval training. And you're relating it to at what point this is relevant to a sprinter. So during his sprint intervals, he can rest in between and then he goes again. That is obviously interval training, but it's also improving his speed. Plyometric training improves power in the legs, which he needs for a push-off at the start of the race, so out of the starting blocks. So again, it's already showing that you are applying your knowledge of plyometric training to the fact that a sprinter needs power and they need it for that push-off at the start of the race. Continuous training, linking it to aerobic endurance. As we know, a sprinter does not need aerobic endurance. At this point might be more about, if you've gone along the lines of what speed, reaction time and linking it, that continuous training doesn't relate to reaction time, because obviously using the information it gave us, we know it doesn't, but it's simply to demonstrate the knowledge of what continuous training is. My AO3 points then will be going into the importance of each training method and my evaluation. So obviously these are just really brief points just so I know what I'm going to say, but essentially interval training improves his anaerobic fitness and speed. Plyometric training improves his power. He obviously needs that. Continuous training is no value to Mason whatsoever, okay. And then your conclusion will be about the fact that interval and plyometric training are most important, not so much continuous training. So that would be you concluding your answer. So at this point, you should then be able to have a go at the question, okay? So using that brief plan that we've just gone through, we would then essentially be putting it together. So I'm going to go with where I explored option 1 and option 2. This is kind of like a plan for option 1, but obviously in more detail. And then option 2, so where we talk about AO1, AO2, AO3 all in one paragraph, that is the structure I'm just going to show you now, okay, how I decide to do it. So my first paragraph, interval training is repeated sets of work followed by rest and recovery. That's my AO1 point straight away. In training, Mason would use short but intense work periods followed by recovery periods before sprinting again to improve his speed. We are applying our knowledge of interval training to a sprinter. I've said it will improve his speed. I've said how the actual training method will improve his performance. This is essential so he can improve his anaerobic fitness and speed as the race is short or it's over quickly. That is me evaluating, saying how it's important. So I'm saying it's essential. He needs this method of training for sprinting, okay? And I'm backing up why I think that, because it improves his anaerobic fitness and his speed, and linking it again to the fact that a race is very short. So that's my paragraph 1. My paragraph 2, as we said in our plan, is going to be about plyometric training. So plyometric training involves leaping and bounding, box jumping. So again, my AO1 point showing I know what plyometric training is. Mason would use this to develop his power in his legs, which he requires to accelerate or push out of the blocks. So that's my AO2 point, linking it to sprinting. This is also essential if Mason is to push away from the blocks quickly, as the greater force he exerts, the faster he will go. So I'm saying how plyometric training will benefit his performance in sprinting, and again saying that this plyometric training is essential for his performance. Our last paragraph then, continuous training involves non-stop running at a submaximal pace. I've stated what continuous training is. Even though we know that continuous training is not important, I get a mark by saying what it is. This would improve his aerobic endurance rather than his reaction time or speed, which is what Mason needs so he can react to the gun. Okay, so I've basically there linked the fact that continuous training does not really improve any of the components of fitness that it is specified in the question. I've obviously kind of stated that he could do with reaction time because he needs it when reacting to the gun, but I've said that it doesn't obviously apply to continuous training. This training method is of no value to Mason. It is less effective in directly improving his sprint performance compared to interval training or plyometric training. So I've basically said continuous training is not the type of training that he needs, and I've said because it doesn't improve his sprint performance. I would then conclude my answer. While all three methods have some benefit, interval and plyometric training are the most important for Mason due to their direct relevance to anaerobic and explosive demands of sprinting. So I've basically just summarised what I've said in them 3 paragraphs to the fact that I think that, so remember giving your opinion, I think that these 2 methods of training are important, whereas continuous training is not so important. Okay, so that, like I said, is option 2 of a structure, whereas the plan was kind of following that option 1, so you've got a little bit of both. So yeah, it looks a lot, but if you break it down, it's actually really simple. This is obviously quite an easier question, I'd say, but yeah, generally this is how you would structure it. If you would like to then pause the video now, there is a extended mark question for you on the Revision Hub page, so have a go at that. There's actually 2 questions, you can do both, you can pick one, it's completely up to you. Get your AI feedback, see what it says, and yeah, see how you do. Okay, welcome back then. So just before we finish, I just wanted to go over some top tips. Okay, so remember AO1 questions, so they're simple, they're recalling facts, try to use key terms, key definitions, that's where you're demonstrating the pure knowledge that you have learnt. Okay, AO2 questions, give specific sporting examples or apply your knowledge to a sporting example. AO3 questions, remember you may need to provide knowledge of the topic before you analyse something, so you may already need to know something, understand something before you can analyse it. Extended questions, I would highlight key information, so command words, the topics, etc., and plan out your answer to ensure that you're hitting each of them assessment objectives. That's my top tip for extended questions. And then lastly, check the command word in each question. It's a real clue as to which assessment objectives you're being tested on. So if you can determine what command word it's asking you, what you need to do, you'll have a better chance at applying your knowledge and being able to actually answer the question. There's nothing worse than just thinking, oh, I know what I need to do, and you just write loads of stuff down, but you haven't actually met that command word and answered what it's asking you. Okay, I hope you found that really helpful. If you want to have a go at the practice questions again, you're more than welcome to. They reset, so if you know you didn't do very well or you want to improve, you can simply have another go and see if you get better. But I hope you have a really good exam, and good luck with your revision, the rest of your revision, and good luck with your final exam. Thank you very much. Bye bye.